Hello, I'd like to welcome the viewers to this new series where we will be covering all the latest news and events. We have a wonderful panel here, years of independent research, lots of knowledge. We recently had Freedom Day rallies right here across the country in Australia, drawing the public's attention to the horrible track record of the drug manufacturer CSL, who was creating a vaccine that was abruptly terminated after several trial participants tested false positives for HIV results. Now, it was immense value to turn up at the rally, bring this to people's attention, warn the public to beware and investigate for themselves. And more fuel has been added to the fire with the cancellation of the Victorian Australia Day Parade, destroying our sense of national pride. We're under multiple forms of attack, trying to destroy the Aussie spirit, divide and conquer. It's very alarming. We have a criminal cabal of politicians, bankers that are working tirelessly to actively strip us of our rights and depopulate the planet under Agenda 21. There is an aerial assault in the sky with geoengineering. We have rain-making acts, cloud seeding, manipulating weather, adding fluoride to the water, depleting all the nutrients with genetically modified organisms. So we have to always remain vigilant, look at educating ourselves and others. Now, I'll be handing it over to Karen. Please explain to the viewers the COVID tyranny that people are suffering in New Zealand and anything else you'd like to discuss, please.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. G'day, guys. How you all doing? Look, the week before last, Jacinda Ardern announced a state of emergency here in New Zealand under the climate change banner. People seem to be unaware of the significance of that because there's no military in the streets yet. But the fact remains, she has actually put the country under a state of emergency. I believe this is in unison with what's unfolding in Australia right now. On Friday, late Friday evening, the Australian Federal Parliament passed the legislation to allow foreign troops on our soil. And it has been said that those troops, the conduct of those troops while on our soil, will be without question and no ramifications for their behaviour. That should alarm every Australian. It should also alarm every Anzac, because potentially our governments have the capability to set on fire the entire nation. We saw that happen last year. Any thinking person realises that the intensity of those fires last year was not normal. The smoke from those fires last year appeared here in New Zealand and the sky turned orange, an eerie orange. I am married to a New Zealander and I asked my husband, when you were a child growing up, do you ever remember the fires from any bushfire reaching New Zealand? And the answer was no, that had never happened before. I have continued to ask that question of many a New Zealander that I come and in my life meet. None of them can ever remember the smoke from an Australian bushfire reaching the shores of New Zealand. So that tells you the intensity of those fires last year is not natural. I honestly believe we have about 8 weeks left of life as we know it. I believe when the conditions are right, that again, Australia will be set on fire. I believe the chemtrails that are being sprayed across our nation are indeed a fire accelerant. And I base that on the observations of last year, the massive loss of wildlife, the intensity of those fires. I believe any thinking person knows that that is not normal. I believe that, sadly, the loss of life will be massive. That will be used as a trigger for declaring a state of emergency. I believe that New Zealand will enact at the same time as Australia, and I believe what is ever about to unfold is going to unfold simultaneously as a logistic manoeuvre across both nations. Regardless of whether it's 5G, vaccinations, farmers without water, foreign debt, foreign ownership, the common denominator is it is our politicians as a collective, local, state and federal politicians as a collective that legislate these abuses against us all. I spent every day since the day of Scott Morrison's speech working out what the common denominator was with our politicians. As you all know, I believe incest and child rape is wrong, and I have endeavoured to highlight Franca Arena and Bill Heffernan's good work in exposing this network of filth for a couple of years now. The common denominator all our politicians share, regardless of what branding of flavour they say they are as a political party, all political party branding is a lie. I know that because I've researched them all. Every politician is Freemason Demorlais connected. I know that because I've done the research on who they are, what they are, where they went to school, who's their daddy, who daddy married, how many children were had, and what those children do for a living. Most of them are bureaucrats or entertainers inside the judiciary, and indeed generational politicians. Well, here we are today. It is the 14th of December 2020, and I believe within the next 8 weeks, there is going to be tragedy befall us like we've never imagined before. Senator Heffernan and Franca Arena, I'm just going to talk for a moment about Senator Heffernan's speech. And whilst people may have watched the speech, they seem to not be comprehending his opening line, where he says in that speech, I have produced a set of documents, plural, to the Royal Commission under an order to produce. So right there, Senator Heffernan just told you the 6 commissioners on the most recent Royal Commission have seen these documents. Senator Heffernan just told you those 6 Royal Commissioners are corrupt. He goes on to say, every Attorney General from Philip Ruddock until now has seen these documents. Senator Heffernan just told you 6 of your Attorney Generals are corrupt. He then goes on to say they are police documents and they are very disturbing. He just told you your entire judiciary is corrupt. People watch that speech, yet it appears to me they fail to comprehend the enormity in the words that he speaks. And here we are today, collectively between Anzacs, 30.5 million. There's 5 million New Zealanders and there's 25.5 million Australians. The common denominator, all our politicians are abusing every one of us. Right down to little things, like you need a license to fish, and the politicians are going to tell you where you can fish. Really, I would like Australians to go back and listen again. Spend a moment contemplating the gravity of the words spoken by Senator Heffernan. I have spent near on 3 years establishing the connection they all share. Corruption of this level, it's pretty obvious they must have a shared common denominator. How do you get 40 years worth of politicians all silent on the horrendous abuse of raping our children, stealing children from their families to put them inside institutions which are then used to peddle them through the judiciary initiations of Freemason Demolay. And that's a fact. 42,041 fellow Australians told you, and there are many thousands who have indeed suicided. That is the network. 8 weeks from now, I believe the loss of life will be massive, and I am very fearful for all of us globally. These vaccinations, I believe, are indeed mass genocide. I believe there has been many, many thousands of children damaged over the last 60 years by vaccinations. I think that's undeniable. Plenty of parents speak out about it. And what's the common denominator? Well, the politicians introduced the vaccinations. Every abuse that is happening to you right now, be it the cost of living, which is driven by the politicians, be it the need now for young mums to be back at work 2 weeks after they've delivered in order to disconnect young mums from their babies, whether it be students who leave university with enormous HECS debts before their life has even begun. Every abuse comes back to the politicians. What's the connection they share? It's Freemason Demolay. I would love to see a world where everyone realised they woke up tomorrow and knew they must target their federal, state and local politicians. They must be at their offices demanding that they stand down. May everyone be empowered, because what is about to unfold, I believe, will be horrendous. If I have a few minutes more, I would like to explain to people what's happening in FEMA camps here in New Zealand. If you fly into New Zealand, you will be put in a government-run FEMA camp. There is an individual inside one of these FEMA camps right now who has refused to be corona tested every 3 days. They have refused to wear a mask. They have been put in isolation. Their meals are delivered to them at least 4 hours late, as I understand it. Their family has been dropping off care packages to the FEMA camp of which they're in. Those packages are withheld for hours at a time. Every morning, a medical nurse, a soldier and a police officer attend their room, trying to coerce corona testing. They've still continued to refuse. As I understand it, they're not allowed to leave their room, and have now been told that if they continue to refuse the corona testing, they can be held for another 28 days and potentially indefinitely. That is happening right now, Anzacs, to fellow Anzacs, and yet none of that's reported in the media. If you haven't worked out now that your media is completely infected with Freemason Demolay, I would suggest to you all go research Rupert Murdoch and find out where he went to school, which you soon discover is Geelong Grammar, a Freemason Demolay school, well known and well documented for its pedophilia. That is not a coincidence. That's the network.
Very powerful, Karen. And that looks like a likely scenario. They create the perfect set of conditions for a raging inferno, and then they ignite it. Very scary predicament that we are in. Our next speaker, we have Eilish. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Hello, everyone. Look, I wanted to talk about what's just happened, okay? So last week we saw Brandy Vaughan, okay, who's an anti-vaccine campaigner, passed away by her 9-year-old son, right? And she was the activist who founded the California nonprofit Learn the Risk. Now, if that's not telling you something, that they are silencing the anti-vaccine campaigners, the people who are concerned about this. And why shouldn't we be concerned? You know, and there's an old saying, you know, first they came for, you know, whoever it was, and then they finally came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. When are we going to wake up, guys? So we've got a very high-profile anti-vax mum whose little boy is now not going to grow up with a mum, okay? And the other thing that's happened, and very, very concerning, has been the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. You know, he's basically scrapped at the moment. He's announced that the government made the decision to abandon the local COVID-19 vaccine after false positive HIV results. Now, the thing is with that, we know that this particular strain of virus that they're going to unleash upon the people in stage 2 of this Rockefeller initiative is that they're going to put out a virus that's the genetic splicing of HIV, which causes acquired immune deficiency syndrome. So they want to attack the immune system. And didn't they say somewhere that they were going to see that HIV is now spreadable via the particles in the air? Okay, so the social distancing, you know, might just be a thing, because these aren't false positives. This is what's in the vaccine. HIV, MERS, and SARS. It's a triple genetic modification of this particular, whatever it is, monster organism that's going to be particularly virulent in the time coming when, and it will give more of an excuse for people to take this vaccine. And I'm just afraid of what's going to come. You know, Karen mentioned the great burn that is anticipated for the eastern seaboard of Australia. Another very prominent political commentator we've seen on these kind of panels before, Max Eigen, said that the chemtrail dust is like sparkler dust. And when you are putting 6 Doppler radars over Sydney, pushing the rain clouds out to sea and dropping all all that beautiful lush forest in New South Wales and around there, the Blue Mountains and all those, and you know, northern rivers, the whole lot, the Great Dividing Range, beautiful country, the most beautiful, the richest country, is going to be, you know, dried out. And then they're going to get these Raytheon laser-tipped Lockheed Martin jets that are going to do the lasering. And as we saw last year, those of us who are following the Lockheed Martin jet trails, we saw them doing these zigzag patterns. And do you guys remember when the news came out and said, oh, all these spontaneous fires just pop, 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 came up everywhere? That is because of the direct action of what happened with these the laser machines after, you know, that came through. You know, we've got to look at these things, guys. We've got to look at the Belt and Road Initiative. We've got to look at China buying up Australian land and water reserves, and how Australian politicians have allowed foreign interests to come in here and rape our resources and not even pay taxes. We have to look at the foreign interests as well of who's profiting from this, you know, from this vaccine regime, and just what is their objective and where does it lead to? Where does it go back to? And we trace it back to a certain man by the name of William, who first created a computer virus and then the software that would eradicate that computer virus, and is doing that now with humanity, you know. So I just wanted to say that I don't know where this vaccine biz is going now in Australia with Scott Morrison stopping this program at the moment, you know, with HIV showing up. It's very, very serious, you know. That's obviously there to destroy all our immune systems so that they can bombard us with more electromagnetic frequencies from 5G and Wi-Fi and everything else they got coming up for us, you know. So we need to educate ourselves. We need to campaign. We need to, like, you know, go to Officeworks and print out a bunch of flyers, whatever we can, and hand them around and letterbox the neighborhoods and do whatever we can to just get the message out there. It's very important that we resist this vaccine. In a way, I'm sorry for the people who've you know, had this diagnosis, this false positive of HIV. What even does that mean? Do you know what I mean? We know that the virus itself is spliced 3 ways, and one of those viruses are HIV. So, you know, God knows what's going to happen in the next few weeks. But yeah, it's really, really crucial time. So do your research, guys, and say a prayer for the little boy that is now growing up without his mother, and just realizing that we, you know, all of us who are outspoken here are putting our very lives and our families' lives on the line to get this message out to you guys, because we need to, you know, we need to carry on where Brandy fell. We need to continue picking up her flagship and pushing on, okay? We can't drop the ball now. We've got to keep pushing and being that resistance. And thanks, Jeff, very much for organising this.
Thank you very much, Eilish. Well said. Next,
May I just say, sorry,
Sure.
may I just say something, please, Jeff, just following on from Eilish. We already know where this is going to go. The politicians have already come out and said, no jab, no job. It will then go to no jab, no welfare, no jab, no access to your bank account. It'll become no jab, no loan. It will become no jab, we are foreclosing on your mortgage, effectively making you homeless. It will become no jab, no school, which actually would be a good thing, because school is the tool they use to deliberately keep us all uneducated on their Freemason demolay web of filth. It will then come, quite possibly, quite quickly, that there will be millions of Australians homeless, those that decide not to jab. I am quite prepared to die at the side of the road, homeless and of starvation, than to take the mark of the beast. I believe that goes against God, and I believe that they are Luciferian Satan worships. That's what Freemasonry is all about. And so I will quite happily die in the street of starvation and homeless than do what they are doing to us now.
unfortunately, that's the strategy a lot of people are looking at, trying to get off grid, do anything they can to avoid this poison being injected. Very disastrous. It often feels like a double negative. No matter which avenue you look at, there's going to be a difficult road ahead. Now, next we have Tricky from the People's Revolution. I understand he has some documents he would like to share, so I will enable that feature now.
Thanks, guys. Hey, how you all doing? Well, things are really ramping up. It's getting serious, eh? We're approaching the year off the Agenda 2021. It's coming on, and it's coming on fast. I want to talk about the Defence Legislation Amendment Bill 2020. I'll share my screen. Let me just tell me if it's working. You guys see that?
I can see at my end.
Yep. All right, so hopefully the audience can see this too. So this bill, the biggest problem with this bill is that it is aimed at enabling foreign troops, whether it be military, naval, air force, and foreign police, to enter our soil for the purpose of national disaster, which is, you know, not really here nor there. The concerning point is emergency. It's an open-ended word. It's an open-ended statement. Now, not only that, but when they come over here for this so-called emergency, they will be free from any sort of criminal or civil liability. So they're free to do what they want to do, guys. It's pretty crazy. So on my screen here, you got the section 123AA of the bill, which is aimed at the immunity. I just want to go through this quite quickly for everyone at home, so they can see what's really going on and how dramatic this could turn out to be if we don't stop it. So section 1 here, a protected person is not subject to any liability, whether civil or criminal, in respect of anything the protected person does or omits to do in good faith in the performance or purported performance of the protected person's duties. So that's written in black and white. A protected person, which will include foreign troops, will not be liable, whether it be civil or criminal. The assistance is provided to prepare for a national disaster or other emergency. Now, guys, that word, emergency, what is an emergency? And I spoke to a senator last week and to the senator's barrister, 2 weeks ago, before I put a petition together with the help of a legal team to try and stop this thing. And one of my concerns that I mentioned was that what is an emergency? Is people gathering in a park showing dissent? Is that going to be considered an emergency? Is people protesting? Can that be considered an emergency? It's an open-ended statement, so all these things could possibly be declared an emergency. The minister may, in writing, direct the provision of assistance in relation to a national disaster or other emergency if the minister is satisfied of either or both of the following. The nature or scale of the national disaster or other emergency makes it necessary for the benefit of the nation. Now, if people are shown, if a group of people in a park refusing to get vaccinated with the COVID vaccine, protesting and showing dissent, that could be considered a problem to public health, to the safety of the public. If that is considered an emergency, then these people can be arrested, they can be misdealt with, and there'll be no repercussions. It's very open-ended. This is what's concerning. Now, the Chief of Defence Force or the Secretary may, in writing, authorise a person or each person in a class of persons to perform duties in respect of the provision of assistance mentioned in subsection 1, if the person or each of the person in the class of persons is any of the following. Now, the first A is just the Commonwealth, ADF, APS, which is a public servant. Now, here's the interesting point B. A member of the naval, military, or air force of a foreign country, or a member of a foreign police force, however described. So that's what it's saying, guys. It's saying foreign naval, military, or air force can come over here, and foreign police can come over here and be free from civil or criminal liability to deal with an emergency. Last week in the Senate, when this bill got passed, there was a Green senator named Senator Steele John. Now, I don't believe the Greens are any better than Labor or Liberal. I think they're just as bad or even worse, similar to what Karen's suggesting here, guys. They're totally corrupt. They're all sellouts. The Australian people have been sold out, and they will continue to be sold out until we kick these bastards out of Parliament. That's what needs to happen. We need to step up now and get rid of them. So this senator made some amendments to the amendment bill, wanted to table these amendments. They all got voted down. But I want to go through these things because each of these things is stuff that I brought up to the senator and his barrister, and stuff that I had seen other people bring up, obviously because it's a very concerning points of this amendment bill. The first thing he wanted to bring up was omit notifiable instrument and substitute it with legislative instrument. Now, what that means is the the authorized person to declare this emergency wouldn't be able to do it just through notifying in writing that this emergency has been declared and that he's authorizing foreign troops. What this would mean is that it had to go through a legislative process, which would involve other leaders from the states and territories to also have their say and opinions on the matter before it just was put through with no sort of dealings at all. 33 no's. So we have people in the Senate that don't think clarifying this line is a good idea. So that got voted down. The next amendment was insert the word prescribed before emergency. So now, as I was saying before, the word emergency is very open-ended. So putting prescribed in front of it, to me, that sort of is aimed at making prescribed emergencies a lot more detailed. There might be only a list of emergencies which can be declared, and when they do declare it, it has to be prescribed, meaning they have to go into detail why and who and why, why these things are happening. Here in yellow, may only prescribe as an emergency or kind of emergency an event or occurrence that does not require a protected person to use force. So this is extremely important. This is an amendment that Senator John Steele wanted to put in here. Can only prescribe emergency that is not required to use force or other coercive powers against the person, and must not prescribe protest, dissent, assembly, or industrial action. So this right here was aimed at giving the Australian public some confidence that this bill is not going to be misused. Again, this amendment voted down, guys, 29 no's. to 9 yeses. So again, the majority of the parliament here has suggested that they do not want to clarify this. They want to leave it open-ended. I'm lost for words. I shouldn't be lost for words because these guys are scumbags. I mean, they're proving it right here. Everyone needs to contact these guys and show their disapproval. The last bit here. Before making a direction, the minister must notify the state or territory of the proposed direction and consult with the state or territory about whether the state or territory agrees to the proposed provision of assistance and take into account any views of the state or territory. So what this part is saying is that the authorised person cannot just make a notification and declare an emergency and bring in these foreign troops. They have to liaise with the territories and the states, talk to them about what's happening, suitable protocol to follow and how they're going to do it. He also wanted to omit all the words from and including any of the following. And in subsection 123AA, I might just find that quickly and show you through it actually. 123AA. Where are we? Lines 9, 3 to 8, sorry. 3 to 8. No, I've lost it, guys. But I'll tell you what it is. I'll leave the links in the chat so everyone else at home can follow through. But the paragraph after any of the following is actually, I'm pretty sure it's down here, 3 to 8. Okay, so here, this is line 3 to 8 of 123AA. So they wanted to totally delete everything from line 3, which is this line here, all the way down to line 8. And take note of this, section B, which is a member of the naval, military, or air force of a foreign country. So they wanted to delete that and just replace it with an APS employee, so an Australian public servant, employee, or other employee of the Commonwealth or Commonwealth Authority or agency. So what they're saying is they want to take out the possibility of getting in foreign troops that will not be liable to civil or criminal prosecution, and leave it up to the Australian Defence Force soldiers, our own soldiers, to deal with this. Again, guys, they also wanted to add, and this is a big one, no use of force permitted. At the end of section 123AA, which is the immunity paragraph, they wanted to add in no use of force permitted. What a brilliant idea to put that in. What's that going to do? That's going to give the Australian public confidence that these troops aren't going to come over here and just start using force and be not liable for their wrongdoings. A protected person must not use force against persons or things in relation to the provision of assistance mentioned in subsection 1. That's brilliant. To put that in there would really clarify some stuff. What happens? It gets voted against, guys. Every single legitimate concern that the Australian public has brought to these people has been voted against. Then they claim that's due to time restraints. The time allotted for the consideration of the bill expired. What happens? The bill gets through, 32 votes to 9. It goes through unamended. Guys, we're in fucking deep trouble here. Sorry about my language. We're in deep trouble. This bill got put through on the last week of Parliament for the year, pretty much unopposed. Now, guys, these are mainly Greens that are saying no to this thing here. Steele, John Waters, the Greens, right? Now, I don't trust the Greens as far as I can throw them. It could all just be a ploy to make the Australian public look like there has been some opposition when really it's just a setup. This bill's gone through untouched. Now, when something goes through untouched in the last week of Parliament, it's for a reason. They're going to use this. A bill like this is not just have there just in case. They're going to use it. It sits well with what Karen's saying about potential fires and bringing in foreign troops to deal with those fires. It sits in well with the mass amounts of people that are going to be saying no to this COVID vaccine, which could be now perceived as an emergency due to public health risk. Unvaccinated people for COVID, that could be considered an emergency. Bring in the troops, lay these people down, show the rest of the country that you need to lie down and get this vaccine, or you will be dealt with harshly. Guys, get up now. It's time to get up and stand up. I'm done with this now. I'll turn my screen off. We are in troubled times, all right? I'm confident that we can win this, guys, because there is no higher power than the people. But to win this, the people need to understand that there are no differences between us. The black skin, the white skin, there's no difference. The high income level, the low income level, the Muslims, the Christians, the Buddhists. There is no difference between us, guys. We are of one. We are all God's children, no matter what God you believe in, if you believe or not. We are all God's children, guys. We are one. We need to unite, forget our differences, come together now, because if we don't, our future generations are going to be they're not going to have any sort of life. And I don't want that to happen. All I want people to do now is envision the eyes of the unborn kids of the future. Picture the innocent eyes, get off your ass and start doing something. It doesn't matter what it is. Get up and do something, guys, all right? Stick together and we can win this, but we have to stick together.
Very powerful information that you brought to the panel. And it's very deceptive with these bills, and the ambiguous language that they use is designed to trick people.
Yeah.
So very powerful.
I actually originally, when this bill got passed, I was like, shit, it got passed because I had a petition that was drawn up by my legal team, and it had thousands of signatures on it. And the senators knew I was doing this petition, and they knew there was a lot of Australian public that was concerned. So when I saw this bill get passed, I was like, man, what? It got through. So I started reading through it. And I actually tricked, like you said, the terminology they used. The amendment that I was reading was getting voted against, but it's an amendment of the amendment bill. So it's when you read it, it's quite easy to get flipped around. And that's why I initially thought it happened. It's only come to my attention recently that this bill went through unamended. So like you said, they use the language to trick the common man. So this is why I suggest everyone start reading these documents, get themselves familiar with the processes and the language used. So we will not let these things go past unnoticed. It's time now to stand up and stay on your toes because, like we said, they're getting these things through untouched and quietly and quickly. And they're doing it for a reason. They're going to use it. That's why.
Absolutely. We need an uprising, or soon we'll see foreign boots on soil and the tyranny will ramp up to another level. Unimaginable. Next, we have satanic ritual abuse survivor, Rachel Vaughan. Thank you very much for joining the panel.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I'm an optimist, believe it or not, given, it's a bit weird given what I've been through, but I spent my lifetime talking myself through things and trying to find a positive in every situation. And I can see a lot of merit in what everybody's saying, but I can also see that there is a chance here where we can actually turn this around. So one of the things that keeps coming to mind is that there's so many more of us than there are of them. And they know that, and that's why they're doing this, because they need to get us down to a number where they can deal with us more succinctly. One thing that we do have on our side is that there are a lot of people who are waking up. A lot of people are not listening to the mainstream media, and they are actually informing themselves. There are lots of different places that you can get information now that are alternative. Obviously, you have to get a bit shoot for a lot of that now because it can't go on YouTube, but Max Egan, as Elish mentioned before, is a brilliant resource on a lot of this information, as an amazing Polly on BitChute as well. She's fantastic. Obviously, this channel, Conscious Consumer Network, Dale Holmes, lots of different people are bringing all this information to the fore. I also have enormous respect for Serene Tefaha of Advocate Me, and I just wanted to quote her in an article that she said recently, that you do have rights. So basically, there's the Nuremberg Code. So a lot of people who are doing this work for the government or are in these situations where they work for police or in any government department where they think that this is okay, you can still be taken to trial for this as a war crime down the track, or just a crime against humanity. Humans do have rights. It doesn't matter what your government tells you. Humans have rights, and if you go against that, you will be taken to task at some later date, whether it's, in this lifetime or the next. Serene Tefaha did say that you can say that you don't want to be tested, that you're not symptomatic, that you have no COVID symptoms. So that's one argument that you can put across. You're not, that the other person that's trying to test you and force you to be tested, especially in a situation where it's your employee trying to force you to do this sort of thing, you can point out that they're not an authorised officer to do that. And as Elish was pointing out before, there's all these different steps that are being put into place so that eventually it could be that you can't get access to your bank accounts, or you can't go to the supermarket and buy your food. And personally, I not to take anything away from Karen, I can't see a huge number of people ending up homeless, as much as it's a very strong likelihood given the way things are right now, because I think we are going to get an uprising, Karen. I really do believe that. I think that people are going to fight back, and I really, really hope and pray that that's the case. And hearing the emotion in your voice made me want to cry as well. Get yourself a copy of the Nuremberg Code, have a read of that, have a read of what's happened in history and who has been taken to task over doing these terrible crimes before. And also these FEMA camps, they can't fit us all in there. So what we need is a unified attempt to fight back and refuse the testing and refuse the vaccines. One thing I read recently just absolutely horrified me. In the United Kingdom, the Pfizer vaccine has a warning about being given to pregnant or lactating women, but it's not being warned. People in America are not being warned not to take it if they're pregnant or lactating, which is very concerning because it's the same vaccine. So why would you have a difference in approach? And another thing that from the ICANN network with Del Bigtree, there was an alert out yesterday or the day before, or perhaps it was even today, I think it was today actually, that 11-year-olds are being given the right to consent to the vaccine. So you've got, this is the worry about sending kids to school at the moment. If this is happening in the UK or in America, this is actually in DC and Washington, so that we all know how corrupt Washington is. If that's happening there, it'll be rolled out elsewhere. So people really need to consider whether or not they need to keep their kids home. I really don't know what the solution is, but it is scary. But I do think we have a window of opportunity here where people are waking up, and we are going to get to a point where we will fight back. Obviously, people are being educated. Yes, this speaking up against it is scary, and you will get opposition, and you might get trolled, and there's all sorts of fun things that happen when you stand up for something that you care about. But it's better, as others have said today, to put your neck on the line and to do what you know is right, because it's just what we're here to do. We're not here to just acquiesce and do what we're told. We're here to fight. Now, I was experimented on as a child by medical doctors. I don't trust them. And I was given up to that experimentation by my own family. I know that there are medical professionals that are psychopaths, and they do not care about what happens to the people that they experiment on. So my advice to people is to just be as educated as possible, find your information elsewhere. Alternatively, don't just listen to the mainstream media, and just remember, we are in one big mind control, mind F at the moment. They are doing their absolute best to spread as much fear and horror as possible, and they want everybody to be just so scared that they'll do what they're told. But there are so many more of us than there are of them, so we just got to fight back.
Wonderfully said, Rachel. To inject some positivity into it as well, that is a help. We must try and look on the bright side even when it is looking very dark. Next we have Matt Lawson, who gave a very powerful speech at the last Freedom Day rally and has been educating the public on a campaign, Cops for COVID Truth. The floor is yours, Matt, take it away.
No worries. Thanks, Jeff. And thanks all you guys for being here today. I've loved listening to everything you guys have had to say. I thought before I go into Cops for COVID Truth, I was just going to touch on a couple of things the other guys said. I think everything's very succinct. It's very much in touch with what I think's going on out there. And I think what we're seeing in the media, I mean, we have our own media outlets now. We can be the media to an extent, but we should still watch the media and pick it apart. There's a lot of predictive programming going on out there. If you really look at what they're saying, you can pick it apart and see in the gaps what they're trying to do. They sort of put it in plain sight. They use it for fear, of course, like you guys were saying earlier on. When Karen was talking about the fires, they've already talked about this year, there's going to be a lot more asthma from the fires. There's going to be breathing difficulties. So they're preempting that the fires are going to be really bad this year. They're already talking about emergency measures getting put in place across Australia. So a state of emergency that they can put right across the nation. The plan of that, I think, is to do with the bill that Tricky was talking about earlier. If they have a bill where they can bring in foreign troops under the guise of the fires that are happening around Australia, it also links in with the vaccination as well. So they can use it all. And they're already talking about it. They're putting it out there. They're talking about China. You've heard it in the news lately. They're saying China this, China that, China the other. They're pretty much putting it in our face and saying, this is what's happening. China's the ones that are going to bring in this new world order. So they're talking about it every day, and they're allowing us to hear this. Our government's in bed with these guys, and we should know this and be aware of it. And the biggest thing that I'm seeing in the people that I'm speaking to is there is a lot of fear out there. There is a lot of fear. And when people get scared, there's fight, flight, or freeze. And we've got so many people in Australia right now that are frozen. And it's our job in a way to get them out of that frozen state. And the best way to get out of that frozen state is to empower people. So we have to remind people the power that they have, each and every single individual. And that's where Cops for COVID Truth came about as well. That's a police officer in Griffith in New South Wales who stood up and said, wait a second, all this stuff that's happening makes no sense. The government's using us as pawns. They're doing it to bring in an agenda. He penned together a letter. The beauty of that letter is we can actually get out there and start talking to police officers. Now, myself, I've had some really shit run-ins with the police. A little bit like Karen, I've been taken off Facebook and had all kinds of defamatory things said about me. I don't really give two hoots about what anyone says about me. In the end, you stand in your own truth. The truth prevails every single time. If you're speaking the truth, it beats anything. It puts light into all the darkness around the world. So we can actually start speaking truths, and we can start talking about, you know, we're kind of beyond it, but we can talk about the PCR test, the fact that it doesn't work. We can talk about the fact that COVID hasn't been isolated. But what we really need to start talking about is the fact that this is a government agenda getting put in place. They've turned every single human against each other. It used to be that you'd look at terrorists or you'd look at this or that. Now they've made it so you look at your next door neighbor and say they're a threat. And it's a really smart way to do it, but these guys aren't smart. Because if you start standing up against them, they falter. So what I'm now encouraging people to do is we've got flyers, we've got information everywhere. What we need to do is start preaching. We're preaching to the converted a lot of the times on our pages. We need to start going outside of that. We need to start looking over our fence, over the back fence, talking to our neighbors in the shopping center, saying good day to people, talking in the street. A smile will break the ice. A smile will take someone out of a frozen state. We need to start rehumanizing everyone, because at the moment, everyone's dehumanized. Everyone's robotic in what they're doing. If we can spread this information, if we, even people with 200 flyers, go down to Officeworks, print them for $10 and drop them in every letterbox in your neighborhood. If you wake up 10 people and they wake up another 10 people, we need a groundswell of people for this. This is a numbers game. And while it is scary, and I do think what Karen said with the fires coming, is going to happen. I think the vaccine is going to come much quicker than we think. People are thinking March. Now, I think this is a bit of a false flag with the CSL and the HIV. They want us to think that they're protecting us. Look out, there's HIV in this virus. In my opinion, they want the Pfizer virus in. It's the mRNA virus. It's the endgame virus that I keep calling it a virus, vaccine that they want to get into everyone's body if they can. So by saying to us, we're going to protect you from the dangerous one, they'll slip that one in the door. Now, I'm already hearing from nurses that are getting signed up to start in the middle week of January. So they're immunization nurses that have already signed contracts to start from the second week of January, immunizing people throughout Australia. Now, another thing that Tricky spoke about earlier was the first people of our nation. We need to understand and start listening to the first people of our nation. And we have to understand that the division that's happening here has to end. Between the groups in the background, between the individuals with egos in the groups, egos have to be stripped. Everyone has to remember now, we got stripped of all our materialistic things during these lockdowns. Let that shit go. We have to work together. We can work as 7 or 8 or 10 or 20 different parties under one umbrella, but it's humanity that needs to do this now. First Nation, around the world, all the different First Nations people have to work with each other, because that's the first people they're going to take this vaccine to, and our elderly and our children. We have to stand together right now. It's not something to be fearful of. Be aware, be educated, and be alert, but understand the power of one. Every single individual, every one of you guys here who is amazing in speaking your truth, just needs to feed it out into the suburbs, into the areas, into all the cracks and crevices where we can wake people up and bring them on board. Because as soon as we have the masses on board, we win this. I feel like we're already winning it. And I feel like they're rushing it, because in their minds, when they put lockstep together, it was going to be 5 years before people started pushing back. We're pushing back within a year. So we've surprised them, I think, with the amount of people that are already awake and aware. We just need to go outside of the ones. Don't preach to the converted anymore. We've got all of ourselves. We're here and we're good. Start going outside of that. Don't be afraid to have the tough conversations. If you're out there and you're not sure, speak up. And if you're there and you're thinking, this smells really bad, something's wrong, come and speak to someone, one of us. We're going to be there with open arms. We're going to hug you and say, come on board. It doesn't matter if you've been wrong. It doesn't matter if you've called me a dickhead. Come across and we'll take you with open arms.
Very well said, Matt. And excellent point you raised. When we work as a team, we can reach more numbers and ultimately save more lives. It's definitely a combined effort.
I just want to jump in here quickly on something that Matt said, and he's spot on. Hey, to win this war, we need everyone on our side, and that includes the sheep. So instead of going out there with hate and saying they're wrong and this and that, you need to talk to them with love in your heart and kindness, and understand that they're only at the start, maybe not even haven't started the journey into the truth yet, but we need to get them started now. So introduce them slowly. Don't go straight to the hardcore stuff. Break it to them easy. Understand, Matt's right. We are preaching too much to our own choir, guys. We need to get outside. It takes one step to talk to your own people. Next, the bigger step is to break outside of that and start talking to the unknowing people, the people that haven't yet learned to think critically and analyze things correctly. That's the big step that we all need to start taking. What are you laughing at, Karen?
No, I'm not laughing. Sorry, I interrupted and I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, Tricky.
Yeah.
Had you finished or not?
Yeah, pretty much. I can't remember what I was saying now. You totally disrespect my partner.
I just want to follow up with both what Matt and Tricky are saying. And I'll tell you what happened to me. Last week, YouTube gave me a 9-day ban, right? And so what I did was I went down and bought 2 whiteboards, okay, that were about like from shoulder to my hips, okay? And I wrote messages on my whiteboards. I bought 2 of them, one for the back, one for the front. They're great because they're lightweight, little bit of rope through them, fabulous, right? Easy to walk around in and everything, really good. And so I thought I will not be silenced. Like YouTube want to ban me, that's okay. I go up to the streets of Kaikoui with my sandwich boards on and a flyer. I was pointing out to my community that the week before, Jacinda had announced that there was 21,000+ families in New Zealand in need of a state home, effectively homeless. If there's 4 people in the family, we're talking about 100,000 people plus, right? Then the next day, so the New Zealand government says there's 21,000+ families without a home, in need of a home. The very next day, Jacinda Ardern and the New Zealand Parliament came out with, "We declare a climate emergency. All government bureaucrats will now get an electric car." Right? I had this on my sandwich boards. I walked up and down the streets of Kaikoui. Everybody I passed with said g'day, had a conversation, explained to them those 2 things, and I asked them what their thought was. I spoke with over 150 people. 149 of them were outraged. I had little brochures printed up, and on the back of those brochures, I had the contact details for the politicians in this area, so that I said, if this upsets you, please use your voice. Make a phone call, send an email. You must use your voice and speak up. And that was really as easy as that. I have met 149 of the most fabulous people in my town just last week. So it really does work.
I love it. And I was going to say as well, we've got an initiative that's happening around Victoria right now. Next weekend on Saturday, people are going out with trestle tables, and all they're going to do is put up on there, "COVID is a hoax, prove me wrong." The idea of that is it's a really gentle way to get people in, because they'll come and have a conversation. Then on the desk, you have Cops for COVID Truth, you have the COVID medical doctor's information, and you have all your information about your vaccines, including the pregnancy things that you were talking about earlier. So if someone's lactating, they shouldn't be taking it, but also within the first 2 months of pregnancy, the fact that there's never been a coronavirus vaccine that's worked, the fact that when they tested on animals in 2003 and 2009, all the animals got lung disease, and when they got the wild coronavirus, they died. So these little bits of information, and it's exactly what Tricky said. You don't want to wait, because we've all gone down the rabbit hole, and it's 2 weeks of horrible no sleep. We don't want to wake them up too quickly, because they'll freak out. So we do it in a really gentle manner. And even if you plant a seed and have someone walk away with that seed, that's a start.
And that's the thing. When, a lot of people are scared to talk to the outside world, because when we're on social media, you get a lot of kickback from the outside world, and they're quite aggressive, some of these people. When you talk to people on the street, they're not like that. The cowards, the ones that really want to get you, they won't get you. The cowards, they will never turn up. The people that come talk to you, they might disagree with you, but they'll have a conversation, and you'll have a proper conversation. There's nothing to be afraid about, guys. Get out there and give it a crack, because that's what we need more of.
That's a very good point you raised, because a lot of people see it as a barrier. They're worried about the resistance, they might receive some of the trolling, because when the information reaches new audiences, that can often come into play. Some people, they've been brainwashed by the mainstream media, and when they hear something that doesn't coincide with their beliefs, they feel like their intelligence has been insulted. But yes, if you can do it in a subtle manner, plant seeds, that's right, and then they'll be inquisitive, and with any luck, they'll take it upon themselves to take those steps and educate themselves. So
just one more thing, speaking of planting of seeds, touching on what Matt said earlier, with the originals of not just Australia but around the world. Now there's a few very highly educated people in different fields at the moment discussing things with the elders of different tribes, and it's a theory which involves a new government being formed with the sovereignty of the tribes, which is there is no higher level, but it's not aimed at making them the one and only sovereign being. It's incorporating us, white, brown, purple, pink, the rest of Australians under them. Because the way I see it, this government is too corrupt. It's a government made for corrupt people to do corrupt things to us. I don't think we can save it. I don't think there's a party on our books that can save us. So it might seem to some people that it's pretty drastic to create this new government, but all we're doing is a switching from this corrupt government to this new sovereign government that includes us. We'll have to help them build it because, there's only, 2% of the population Indigenous. So we will help them with it, guys. It'll be inclusive, not exclusive, inclusive. And that might seem drastic, but what is more drastic is continuing on this death path that we're on. That's drastic. So just get this option out there. Get people thinking about this. There's a possibility, right? And that's a bridge that we need to gap, because there is a lot of tension still between originals and non-originals in this country. We need to get over that and start looking forward.
Yeah, and I think just really quickly, because you touched on it earlier, Jeff, as well, Australia Day, we need to be quite sensitive with it. The government, I feel, has stopped the rallies of the Australians walking for Australia Day so that people will rise up to try and walk on Australia Day. It's a day where they see it as an invasion day. And the first people, the original people, that is not a day that they celebrate. So for people to protest the government taking that away, that's a cause of division. You have to think about why they're doing it. Discernment on everything that the government does. Even if it pisses you off and you want to protest and get angry, think about why they're doing it. Because if you rise up with anger there as a white Australian, you're actually going against what we want to stand for, which is unity. So be smart about it.
Absolutely. Very good point you raised. We all have to be working together, Indigenous and non-Indigenous citizens, working for the greater good to get freedom restored back to this country. It's interesting that you would raise that. They are pushing these divide and conquer strategies. They've been doing it for centuries, for millennia. That's how they play that. It's a human game of chess that a lot of people just cannot comprehend. That's how they structure it. So I'd like to thank all the wonderful panelists here today. Are there any final thoughts? Anything you want to leave? It's been a very powerful broadcast.
I have a few things to say.
Yep.
It is in just touching on the China issue. The average Joe Chinaman is not our enemy. Freemasonry into China ramped up in the 1970s with the constant flights of the likes of Whitlam and Hawke and the rest of them into China under the guise of trade. The average Joe Chinaman, they're just like us. They're living under just as abusive governments as we are living under. And if you look at the history, you can tell the infiltration. In the 1980s, the Chinese government came out with the one-child policy, depopulation. It's the same agenda every time. With regards to the Indigenous peoples of the world, all around the world, the Freemasons have a Miranda apparatus, basically. You walk in, you genocide the population, you wipe out the elders and the men first. It is the same process every time. So it is really important to know the history and spread of Freemasonry around the world. That is absolutely essential. Because your average Joe Russian, they're not the enemy. The average Joe Russian despises their governments just as we do. What's the common denominator? Freemasonry in Russia re-entered in 1996. So they have now 24 years worth of infiltration through the Russian parliaments of Freemasonry. So please know your history on the spread, the global spread of Freemasonry around the world, because that is the common denominator of our corrupt governments.
Absolutely. Wonderfully said.
I just want to add a few things too, if I may, just quite quickly. A key, I think, to winning this is non-violent non-compliance. So when they say you need to get the vaccine, it's not like, and a lot of people still think it's forced. It's not forced. They'll never make it forced because that brings in liability issues. But it's blackmail, like Karen was saying earlier. You don't get the vaccine, you won't be going to work. You don't get the vaccine, you won't be going to school. You don't get the vaccine, you won't be able to travel. You won't be able to cross a state border. Now, to get around that, guys, everyone needs to be on board with this. Non-violent, non-compliance. You say no, not doing it. I'm not getting you a fucking vaccine. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not getting you a vaccine. What can they do? Can they give fines to all these people? No, they can't, because we're going to contest it all in court. The court system falls apart. What are you going to do? Arrest us? Where are they going to put us? They can't. Like, I can't remember who was said earlier. They can't fit us all in these FEMA camps. They can't fit us all in prisons. Non-violent, non-compliance. It doesn't work if me and you guys do it. It works if we all do it. If everyone that has half a brain understands that this vaccine, once you get it, there is no turning back. Your health is buggered, to say the very least. Health, that's the very least of our worries at the moment. Once you get it, it can't be undone. You say no, guys. Non-violent, non-compliance. The other thing I wanted to mention is, I think Matt was discussing it. This evil thrives in the darkness, guys. The anxiety, the depression, the fear, all that. So how do we combat that? We rise up physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually too. We spread good vibes. We a simple smile at the random person at the shop. Say hi to them. Say, hey, man, how you going? How's your day going? And actually mean it. You know, mean this, guys. Spread the positive vibes. That's how we combat it. The darkness cannot defeat love. Love is the most powerful thing. Love is the most powerful thing for one another and for the future generations. That's why we're here, guys. If we all get this in our heart, we'll win this. Well, you got to believe it. You got to have faith and you got to believe it.
Yes, you certainly do. We hope everybody gets out there and spreads this valuable message. Don't be worried about any smart remarks, because that's insignificant in the long run when it comes to our freedom. Any last comments? I think we've done a fantastic job. Eilish?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if you wanted to do some letterbox drops, another interesting document would be to look up Cops for COVID Truth. Serene Tefaha from Advocate Me has a Wix site that is advocateme.wixsite.com/cops for COVID truth. And if you go on there, or just Google those terms, it'll come up in your Google search. Print out the first and second letter, and then if you walk past your local police station and you see a few police cars, even like unmarked cars out in front of the police station, just kindly put a few of the photocopies on the windscreen. You know, maybe go into the police station and hand one into the nice constable at the window. You know, if you're walking around town and you see a few cops on patrol, hand a few of those Cops for COVID Truth out. You know, let's see if we can get them to join our side, because there's some quite outspoken members of the constabulary now that need the support, and their numbers will grow too. So let's keep opening the eyes of our local constabulary too. So look up Cops for COVID Truth, and be like some of these activists on here that are photocopying office works and walking around with reams of paper and handing them out, putting them on windscreens, and just educating the community for, you know, maybe, you know, an investment of $50 to $100 of photocopying, you know, and it's worth it. What price your children's health, and what price the future generations that are yet to come when we have a DNA altering, RNA altering vaccine? You know, what price is the future generation? I'm doing this for my kids and for your kids. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, it's been a very powerful broadcast. Be sure to tune in next week for more valuable information. Always do your critical research, people at home. We're living in very treacherous times. Thank you for joining us. Everybody take care.